Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today. Chapter 1566 Appropriate Payment. Carl left the skill books behind him and headed for the monk elder's place to get the plum wine and to learn about the possibilities of forming an immortal spirit without using a skill. Dana's was nearly finished now, so he needed to catch up. The elder's place was a bit different than most of the others in town, as it was actually a converted temple to some unknown god, made of simple slate blocks, but intricately carved in strategic locations. Elder? I was informed you might be able to help me with my immortal spirit. Carl called, unsure which of the powerful presences was the elder himself. A teen boy came to the door and bowed politely. My apologies, sir. The elder is not in right now. He is helping the clan leader copy a skill book. The boy apologized. Carl sighed. So it's my fault that he's out. I was the one that sold them that skill book. Do you mind if I wait for him? I will make him a gift to make up for delaying his work. The boy nodded. Please come this way. There is a sitting area. Carl followed the young monk into a sitting room and found that it was already occupied by a few young monks who were writing out scrolls. Some were combat buff scrolls, a single-use item. Most were doing their homework. The practical answer. Carl took a seat as the young man returned to his duties, and Tion grabbed him a stack of paper from the table, along with an enchanted pen. Thanks. Now what should I give him? Ah? Shatter. That seems like the sort of thing that monks would like. Carl decided. Shatter physical strikes cause vibrations through the opponent's body that damage organs and may break bones. The skill book wasn't a long one, but the skill was incredibly useful for unarmed combatants. Any sort of warrior, really, but especially the monk classes, Carl assumed. As he picked up the pen, Carl noticed that it was enchanted to imitate a number of magical resources in the ink, presumably the ones that were the most common for inscriptionists. However, he did not need those, as he would be using the skill book ability and runecrafting skill to make sure that the book was successful. It was much easier that way. A few of the monks looked up when Carl entered, as they didn't know him. But he was working hard, the same as they were, so nobody interrupted him until an hour later when Carl finished the writing and activated skill book to form it into a usable item. Only then did a few of the other monks come over to speak with him. You've got quite the writing skills. Most of the new arrivals get hand cramps after only a few pages, but it is clear that you've done that more than once. Plus, you didn't need to do anything to the page to get it to work like some with lesser inscription skills need. Carl smiled. I've seen all sorts of methods, including sprinkling magical resources over the pages and using special inks to make the skill book work. Fortunately, I've got fairly decent skills, but my actual skill isn't inscription. It's a lesser version of it, where I can only copy skill books that I already know. I can't create ones that I can't use. The monk winced in sympathy. Well, that is a bit of a restriction. But it looks like you came from a mortal world because you're not starting out with just a handful of basic skills and immortal realm power. Carl hadn't thought about it that way. A young immortal born in an immortal world would naturally have very few skills, but what the mortal worlds would consider an insanely high power level. He wondered if that was a large cause of the invasions of the mortal worlds. Could young immortals sick of being bullied be taking out their frustrations on others? It wouldn't surprise him if that was a large part of the issue. I heard that you are waiting for the elder. Was there something in particular that you needed? I'm not an elder, but I have been training here for 100 and some years. The monk asked. I am looking for a training method that will let me start building my immortal spirit. I don't have a class skill for it, but I do have a rather advanced power matrix, formed on the 5-dimensional shape of a chaos dragon. Carl explained. When you say advanced, how much are we talking? 8 or 9 points doubled within the 4th dimension. 72 points, doubled in the flow of time. The monk whistled. Oh yeah, now that's a big boy level of mana manipulation. Alright, it shouldn't actually be difficult to get your immortal spirit to form. And I should be able to explain the technique well enough that you can get started on the Void Realm transition as well. Carl nodded. If you can teach me, this skill book is yours. What does it do? Causes vibrations through the body that damage the internal organs and bones. It's highly effective for targeting through physical shields and armor. Not so effective for skill shields or energy barriers. But if they're tight to the body, it will still work. The monk nodded happily. I will gladly accept that payment for training. Behind Carl, someone cleared their throat, and the monk went a bit pale. Ah, Elder. I didn't realize that you were back. How did your mission in the clan leader's hall go? Quite well. We managed to get 3 working copies of the book, all for different systems. Now what is this about training a new acolyte? The Elder replied. Carl asked for a bit of help forming his immortal spirit, and I was about to help him with the technique for dragon-based power matrix awakenings. The Elder shook his head and looked at the book on the table. And let me guess, the payment was a skill book for a previously unknown skill? The monk raised his hands in defeat. It's not like that. Shatter isn't unknown, just expensive. Carl gave the man a sympathetic look, then turned to the Elder. I am not trying to step on anyone's toes here. If you've got first claim, I'll happily offer you the chance and the payment. Chapter 1567 Spirit Forming Options. The Elder considered the situation for a moment, then nodded. All right, you go ahead and teach him. If it doesn't work, or there are issues, call for me and I will ensure that his progress doesn't stall. You are taking a personal interest in his progress, Elder? One of the other monks who had been doing inscription work asked. There was a whole stack of single-use scrolls and talismans next to him, so he had been busy for some time, and the note of envy was clear in his voice. The Elder nodded. The sect leader has insisted that we look after him well. His power level is immense, and she sees a possibility that his advancement will benefit the clan as a whole. The monk looked skeptical, but he had no way to know of all the commotion that had been going on within the clan. Even the elders had only paid cursory attention to most of what was told to them. The immortals who were in training hadn't even realized that anything had changed. It wasn't uncommon for them to spend months without contacting others. So 1 or 2 days of events wasn't anything noteworthy. They would find out about it eventually. They had eternity to live, so if the threat alarms didn't go off, many wouldn't even bother to read their notifications. Since it's clear that you don't know yet, as your class is a World Dragon System class, but you haven't advanced, this man is the avatar of the World Dragon. He created a class change obelisk at the old World Dragon Temple, and hundreds of clan members have already managed to get a new class. The clan leader has high hopes for him, so she is willing to invest time into his advancement. The monks who had been working in the room all paused what they were doing to let the Elder's words sink in. You're saying that there is a way right now to advance our classes, just by using an item? One of them asked cautiously. Indeed, not everyone qualifies. You have to possess a suitable system, and you need to have multiple skills outside your skill tree, or a particularly outstanding skill outside your skill tree to qualify for a change. But if you meet those standards, there is no reason that you shouldn't try. I know that most of you filled your tree long ago, and now you're just looking for opportunities. Well, this is one. What does it cost? Nothing, as far as I know. It's been built as a service of the World Dragon Temple on the temple grounds, but where we can reach it outside the barrier. So you are free to go there and try. The Elder explained. And that was how Carl ended up with the Elder and one reluctant scribe, alone in the building. Go. I will get the instruction from you later. Carl offered, and the young monk smiled. I will teach him the technique. But you can have the skill book if you need it. Having Shatter might be enough to give you a better option of classes to advance to. Don't be in a rush to pick something just because it's different. Make sure that it is better than what you have. The Elder warned. Thank you, Elder. The young man replied, then ran out of the building clutching the Shatter skill book. You're totally going to make him pay for that book later, aren't you? The old monk smirked at Carl and tapped his nose. He's been helping out here for a century. I suppose that he's earned at least that much of a perk. Besides, I can just make another copy if I need it. The monk had a point. He was an inscriptionist and he knew the skill. There was no good reason why he couldn't have made a copy for the man earlier and given it to him, other than wanting him to keep working hard on his own to gain opportunities. Follow me to one of the quiet rooms. It's better to explain it there, where nobody will interrupt the energy flows trying to mimic my teachings. It won't work for most of them anyhow, as you have a dragon-based power matrix. Might I ask why you chose the Chaos Dragon? The lone supreme who guided my home world was a Chaos Dragon. As the most powerful being that I knew, it was only right that I patterned my power matrix after her. A female supreme ranked Chaos Dragon, was it? Supreme Lady Matilda. Though now I suppose she's the legendary Lady Matilda, as she advanced. Carl agreed. Ah, I know who you mean. She's quite the character. The clan leader is a friend of hers, so she has visited a few times since I arrived here. But that helps because now I know exactly how you designed your matrix. Might as well get comfortable. This could be either very fast or very slow, depending on your mental strength and comprehension rate. Carl saw that the room had a modified runic circle that appeared to gather energy, but convert it from raw immortal energy into something else. It must be specific to this process, making it easier to form an immortal spirit. Or perhaps it was for the next stage, where you started to convert your immortal spirit into something that was more than a ghost of power. Close your eyes and focus on the space where your power matrix is. In that area, you will want to start forming a ghost of soul energy. Not immortal, power soul energy. Condense it until it remains coherent and keep adding to it. At first, it is going to want to dissipate back into your soul. That is where the power matrix becomes relevant. Instead of letting the energy return to your soul, pull power from the matrix, evenly from every point, and use it to bind the small ball of energy. You are going to want to continue that process until you have one of two things. Either a perfect replica of yourself, or a perfect replica of the concept that you based your power matrix on. Now, if you were a dragon, these would normally be very close to the same thing. But as you are, there is a choice. Either make it into the ghost of a human with the points of your power matrix, at the meridians or as many of them as you can with the points that you have, or make it into the shape of the Chaos Dragon. But before you start, know this one thing. The shape that you give your immortal spirit will affect everything that you do. After this, during your journey through immortality. Also know that there is a third option. For the devoted of the gods, it is possible to form your immortal spirit in the shape of their avatar. Choosing the World Dragon as your immortal spirit will permanently link you to that one deity, but it will also make the transformation process of the void immortal stage easier. Transforming from raw soul energy to divine energy is the most common void stage method for clerics, you see. But you have to choose now before you start. If you choose wrong, you will have to shatter your immortal spirit to start over, and not everyone is capable of even beginning to reform it after that happens. I believe you have met Jeff, the divine lightning dragon, who had his immortal spirit forcibly destroyed. That is the risk that starting over carries. So take your time to choose. Chapter 1568 Spirit Technique. Carl sat on the soft cushion and thought about the three options that he had been given. There was no doubt that using Matilda as the basis for his power matrix was the correct choice. It was still serving him well, and it would far into the future. It also wouldn't interfere if he chose one of the other two options. Somehow, after spending so much time in other shapes, choosing to make his immortal spirit in his true form as a human didn't seem right. Well, as a mostly human. Because with his constitution, that status was up for debate. So, the real question was if he was going to go for the World Dragon or the Chaos Dragon as the design. Trying to mimic Matilda wasn't a bad choice. He knew that it would make it to Legendary. He had the template to follow. But the World Dragon form was based on an actual deity. And it was the deity that created many of the universe's systems. That couldn't be a bad choice. Though he did have other options for shape. Building the immortal spirit in the shape of the cat demon or Tengu would be a weird choice, but he could see how they would work. The cat demon form did feel more natural than making it human, but it still didn't feel quite right. The best choice seemed to be the World Dragon or the Chaos Dragon. He had the Chaos Dragon constitution while he was an avatar of the World Dragon. Changing classes hadn't altered that. As he focused, Carl saw a vision of another form, a tentacled monstrosity. How that would be appropriate, he couldn't tell. But it must be related to his new class. Carl focused on trying to visualize the World Dragon's form in every dimension, so he could integrate it with his power matrix. It was a different shape than the Chaos Dragon, but it was compatible. The real difference was that when he focused on the Chaos Dragon, he saw Matilda, not himself. He was trying to be the best immortal he could be, not the biggest, sexiest Chaos Dragon in existence. The thought made him laugh a little. But Carl was so lost in his mind that he didn't notice that the room was flooding with divine power as something from the greater realms turned its attention on him. Maybe the answer was chaos? He could gather the soul energy and then guide it into whatever form felt most natural for it to take. The first step was gathering anyhow, and then he would bind it to his power matrix after to keep it from dispersing. The real question was where he was supposed to pull it from. Was he supposed to transform it? There was a runic circle in the room that might be for that. The Haint nudged his mind. Both her and the Sword of Champions had huge amounts of stored soul energy that they weren't using. They were weapons, they only advanced as their wielder did. They didn't need to go through any sort of process. So, the energy they had was all for him to make them stronger with. Plus, they were already both sentient weapons. They didn't even need his skills unless he was going to try to bump their quality up another grade. Carl formed a runic array in his mind, intended to transform immortal energy into soul energy using a runic description and a combination of both Tion and Leo's versions of healing. Nature and holy magic working together should do it, he hoped. Slowly, he began to draw the spare energy from the two weapons, forming an amorphous cloud of energy in the space. He let it form and twist as it wanted, as long as it didn't dissipate. The natural shape seemed to be vaguely draconic. It had wings and a tail for certain. That was good enough for Carl, and he began to shape the energy enough that it would link to the many points of his power matrix. He didn't want to take too much from the weapons. They would serve as the reserve when he was close to the end and needed a final push to complete the process. So, he drew from outside and let his makeshift conversion matrix transform the energy in the room into soul power. A tidal wave of power hit him like a tsunami, rattling Carl's mind enough that he nearly lost control of the process. Assuming that he had simply miscalculated, Carl focused his mind to keep the power flowing at the only rate that he could keep stable, and let the converted power fill the matrix to flesh out the immortal spirit. It felt a lot like divine power and nature magic, but that was likely inevitable. He had used those two sorts of magic in the array, so there might be some impurities in the soul power that he was refining from the room. But it was working. The power was stable, and it was adhering to the power matrix in all 5 dimensions, giving him a coherent immortal spirit, even if it was still pretty wispy. The power wasn't stopping, and Carl was beginning to wonder if the conversion from immortal energy to soul energy was a much higher flow rate than this process was designed for. After all, the mana pool of an immortal was vastly larger than their mental energy reserves. He should have put more time into the risk assessment part of this process, instead of assuming that the array in the room worked the way it appeared to. If there was a hidden flow-limiting rune in there that he had missed, he would really look like a crazy masochist to the elder watching him flood himself with power. The elder who was watching in awe as Carl siphoned the divine power in the room, as well as most of the mana, to do the gods only knew what. He had never seen anyone do something like that when they were supposed to be shaping their soul energy to bind it to their power matrix. Chapter 1569. Energy is energy, right? That was a part that Carl had missed in the explanation. He had heard soul energy, and assumed that whatever he could get his hands on was fine. The elder had assumed it was only common sense that you used your own soul energy to form your immortal spirit. So he hadn't seen the need to spell it out. Naturally, Carl had no idea that after binding his immortal spirit to all the points of his power matrix and giving it shape, it was technically finished. It had a shape, it was stabilized, and the spirit was permanently linked to him, protecting his soul and power from attacks. Without that knowledge, he simply didn't stop and flooded the spirit with power until it felt like a proper spectral being, and the power influx slowed. Finally, he opened his eyes, pleased that he hadn't had to burn through the reserves in the haint to complete the task. "Welcome back. How did it go?" the elder asked slowly. Good. The runic array that I used to gather more power to convert was a bit flaky, and the flow rate was wrong, but I got that all sorted out, and I've got the spirit to adhere to all of the power matrix points. You were right, the actual formation process wasn't too bad. Picking the right form was the hard part, and after that, it was just a matter of getting enough energy to make a spirit. The elder nodded. He had seen all sorts of strange things over the years, and this one felt like intervention by a powerful being that had some level of divine lineage. For a beast master type class, that might be normal. Maybe. How large did you manage to get the immortal spirit before it stabilized? The elder asked, ready to move on to the next step. That's hard to say, the mental space is a bit odd that way. But I directly overlaid it on the power matrix with a change of shape, as I chose to model it after the world dragon, so it should be the size of a supreme ranked chaos dragon. And how faint is the energy between the points? Not too bad. Feels a bit like a spectral entity. Not solid, just energy. But cohesive enough that I would be able to clearly identify it. The elder hummed for a moment as he considered the possibilities. Do you mind if I look into your spirit for a moment to verify that status? If it is that dense, I believe that you could move on to beginning to transform it. That was excellent news for Carl. Starting on the void realm of immortality today would be a huge step ahead. And everyone made the sound so hard. Go ahead. If there are issues, I should still be able to make some tweaks. Without causing issues for myself, he agreed. The elder put a hand on Carl's forehead and looked into his mental space, only to be horrified at the utter chaos that he found. Yes, there was a power matrix there, but there were also a number of linked separate spaces with power flowing in every direction, a pair of weapons, a soul bond, a system link, and the divine bond that was customary for all avatars. Plus what looked like an inactive black dragon inheritance. It wasn't a mental space, it was a disorganized storage closet, and it was a wonder that the man could form a coherent thought. That didn't mean it wasn't powerful, though. The power matrix was absolutely stunning, a masterpiece of mental discipline that had created a mind-bending monstrosity of chaos and incomprehensible interdimensional links. With a perfectly formed immortal spirit layered over the top in a slightly different pattern that still somehow met with all the essential points of the power matrix. How that worked was a mystery. The two dragons didn't even have the same number of wings. But it did. The elder retreated before he was tempted to try to understand. It would only damage his own progress and give him a headache. Perfect. That is more than strong and stable enough to begin on the next step. What you need to do now is convert that immortal spirit from raw soul energy into something else. What you choose will be the basis of your void realm mental defenses, so I recommend choosing an energy form that you understand well. Now, it will still be an immortal spirit, part soul energy, and linked to both your soul and your power matrix, but the energy will no longer be a raw and unrefined sort. Do you understand? Yes, I get it. Keeping the core essence of soul energy, but enhancing it with an elemental affinity, or other sort of power so that it can do more than simply exist as a soul, right? The elder smiled. Exactly. If only everyone could understand the concept as easily as you, I would be out of work. I don't think that you have to worry about that, elder. Most of the reason that I get it is because I already know how to use soul-based attacks, and I learned to layer other skills over them to make them more effective. Soul Siphon with Chaos Vortex is a particularly nasty combination, Carl offered. That sounds like a crime, and I don't even know what the combined effect would be. The Chaos Badger came up with it. But I think that I know what I want to do for my immortal spirit. The greatest advantage that I have isn't my affinity for chaos, or raw power output. It's my regeneration, both physical and metaphysical. So, if I imbue my immortal spirit with the essence of regeneration, I should be able to turn it into something that will passively bolster me, right? The elder nodded. That is a valid theory. The immortal spirit of a void realm immortal is a passive buff of sorts. For most, it's an extreme resistance to something specific, but if you have the comprehension to make it into a regeneration effect, that would also be suitable. Chapter 1570. Pick a flavor. In a way, the mental space was its own world. It had rules, stuff in it, and now he was adding aspects to the immortal spirit that would help him in the future. Like a natural resource. So, it was only right that he applied the principles of reality warp and world crafting to his own immortal spirit to make the changes. Not the skills, obviously, but the concept behind them. If he imbued his immortal spirit with the fundamental rules of life, creation, and mana manipulation, with a focus on regeneration, he should be able to turn it into a massive lake of power that would passively heal him in mind and body. Actually, he had shaped it like the world dragon, so making the essence of it more like the world dragon's breath, which was already a life and nature type effect, might be a great idea. But that also made him wonder if it might be a better idea to embrace a little bit of every one of the beasts into his immortal spirit. They were all part of him, even if their spaces were separate. Somehow, it just didn't seem right. The system led him in a specific direction, and it wasn't tied to the beasts that he had chosen, so it was likely to go in a more personally focused direction. With that in mind, the plan to give himself regeneration based on the fundamental rules sounded like the best idea. He had a pretty good grasp of many of the rules now, even if most of that was gathered from the beasts as they studied. But he could add all sorts of things to the immortal spirit if he wanted. But how did that saying go? Too many chefs ruins the soup. It was better to keep it focused and on target, instead of risking ruining the flavor of the change. Before starting anything, Carl carefully considered just what he wanted his spirit to be like when he was finished. The goal was to have an immortal spirit that would save you if your body was destroyed, so he was reasonably certain that regeneration was the right plan. He also had chaos-based regeneration from the void body skill that would let him reform from mist if his body was destroyed. That sounded like just the sort of thing that an overpowered immortal should be able to do. Not waiting for someone to resurrect him from his soul alone, but being able to full reform and regenerate if his body was destroyed. But that meant he would also need a bit of protection for his immortal spirit itself. Spreading it out like he did would save some of it, as most skills wouldn't target him through time, or affect the fifth-dimensional portion of his soul. That would allow him to save a bit of himself to regenerate from, even in the most dire of situations. But a little focus on giving himself a presence in the chaos plane wouldn't be wrong. Splitting his essence just enough to access but not enter the chaos plane. That would let him manipulate his rescue skills to throw his damaged soul somewhere safer than where he was. Then, he could wait to regenerate and use Planeswalker on a portal to come back. Overall, it wouldn't be a terrible safety net. The only question was how he would do that. The immortal spirit didn't really want to be linked to anything but his power matrix. However, the matrix was based on the Chaos Dragon. There had to be a way. However, the more that he thought about it, the more that he realized he simply lacked the knowledge and power to manage such a thing. It wasn't something that he would manage without finding a specialty skill to assist him. It simply couldn't be baked into his immortal spirit. He could, however, evolve his immortal spirit through the void stage while giving it the ability to regenerate him from pure energy. That was something that he could do. It was just the forcible shift between planes that didn't seem possible at the moment. Perhaps for Kara it would be, but not for him. So, Carl got right to work designing the change to his immortal spirit. It was like a runic inscription in a way, and he even designed it with runes, as that helped him visualize the effect that he was trying to create. The fundamental rules, imbued with the essence of world dragon breath to match the shape of his immortal spirit, and return life where there was none before. If that wasn't enough, then nothing would be. The real challenge started when Carl tried to actually change the immortal spirit. It wasn't a matter of power. He couldn't simply pour energy into it and convert the whole thing with updated soul energy. Instead, he had to inject the change into the ocean of power that was his immortal spirit, and then wait for it to disperse so that it wasn't rejected. A little bit at a time so that the change was integrated. This was not going to be a quick process, but it wasn't a difficult one, and he could do it in the background as long as he didn't need 100% of his focus for something else. It would also progressively increase his regeneration rate as he finished it, and it would give him a solid base to work from when he finished and wanted to solidify the immortal spirit for ascension. With the process started, Carl focused on the elder again to see how the man responded. "I take it that you've picked a direction?" Carl nodded. "Using the fundamental rules to create an ongoing regeneration effect from the immortal spirit. I had the understanding to make it regenerate both itself and my body, so I should be able to recover from most things, I believe. I'm already quite good at that, with multiple regeneration abilities, and an advanced constitution. This is just a bit of added protection, in case something hits me harder than I could normally recover from." The elder chuckled. "I see that the chaotic nature of the badger is not all a bad influence on you. You have developed a healthy level of caution, despite your clear intention to do things that might leave you as no more than a fragment of a soul. What can I say? It's a gift." Chapter 1571, The Challenge of Immortality. Now that you have your immortal spirit fully formed for protection, you should look for the chance to take an outing. Going to see one of the many dungeons, hidden realms, or trial areas would be good for you. Just look for a larger group to go with, and they can explain the basics to you. Oh, I suppose you'll want to wait for your wife to be ready to come with you. I forgot that you were married, so few of the young immortals are. But then, few of the older ones are either. Faithfulness is challenging to come across when you understand what forever means. Carl chuckled. Well, I don't have to worry about that. With the soul bond, I don't have to worry too much about things breaking down. You don't have breakups when your thoughts and emotions are shared. The elder smiled. Well, I wouldn't guarantee that. I've met some truly horrible people. But you certainly don't have the cheating and games that lead to most of the issues. And, with a soul bond, you don't have the risk of throwing the other under the bus in an emergency because it also hurts you. That alone is likely the largest reason that immortals are bad at dating. Well, that and the fact that for most sex, the average lifespan of an immortal rank combat specialist is under 40 years after reaching immortality. Carl shook his head. You know, that still shocks me. How can immortals be so bad at immortality? The elder laughed. Everyone wants to get ahead. Being the weakest immortal is no different than being a common ranked mortal. You get no respect. So, they put their lives on the line to get as far ahead and gain as many opportunities as they can. And there are plenty of opportunities. Unlike the mortal realms, where mostly the gods put something in place thousands of years ago and left them to their own devices, it's not uncommon for deities to directly intervene in the immortal worlds. They will add new trials, drop relics for us to fight over, and alter existing resources with once-in-a-thousand-years level rare opportunities. It is suspected that most of that is a grand plan by the laughing god. He's a chaos god of pranks, among other things. But without proof, many believe that it's the result of lesser gods fighting for power. You see, for divinities, worship is the best way for them to gain power. Why is the world dragon such a powerful god? Because he made systems on thousands of worlds, and the residents worship him. With that much devotion behind him, it's only natural that he would ascend to the ranks of the greater gods. So, as he also made the system for this world, he holds great influence here. As his avatar, you will most likely find that every outing you take will attract a large deal of good luck. It's part of the world dragon's most common bonuses, but it means that everyone traveling with you is also likely to end up in strange situations. Sure, it might be a great opportunity, but great and safe are not the same thing. The best opportunities come with extreme danger and strong protectors. The elder paused as Carl smiled. See, that's the response I expected from you. But that's not the response that most people have. Immortal beasts and monsters might not be a huge threat one-on-one, but we both know that the moment you step into a monster-populated dungeon or instance, there is never going to be just one threat to deal with. The question is if it's only 2 per person, or if it's more. Then, you need to get into team coordination, which most groups never even considered when they left the clan. Realistically, only a few clans even have the ability to work together properly. Most of them teach a specialty technique. Great for duels, but not so great for coordination, and they rely on resources to keep themselves alive and fighting instead of making sure they have a healer or arranging for a tank type. If their clan even has any. You make it sound like the whole world is just full of individualists with zero coordination or structure. Carl noted. You're not completely wrong. Most of the elders simply send their youngsters out in the world to fend for themselves. The reason that most of the clans even take in new disciples is for them to bring back resources. The new immortals will use some and bring back the rest. That's better for the elders than going out to get it themselves while they're doing whatever it is that they prefer. Carl nodded. That's the advantage of being the boss. You get to delegate. It's not like you have to gather all the monk resources on your own, and if there is something really rare, you will get first shot at it if the one who collected it either can't use it or doesn't know what it is. That makes me sound so dishonest. But you're not wrong, I get a lot of good stuff because nobody else sees its worth. Now, soon you'll be one of the elders. At the rate you're going, I give it 3 decades, perhaps 4, and you'll be finishing your void stage transition. Once you're there, you're pretty much a ringer for the elder intake. With your creation talents, your team, and all the other skills that you have, I would say that it wouldn't be a shock if you were accepted as an elder with full benefits immediately after. Well, now that would be a wonderful thing. I've just finished upgrading my apartment, so at the very least, I've got a good place to stay while I study. With that as a place to unwind, I wouldn't say that it will be a hardship even if I have to wait a few weeks for Dana to finish her immortal spirit. She has a system skill for it, but it wasn't immediate. Carl explained. The elder shrugged. Having a skill for it is rare, but even if it takes a few weeks, it's still a guaranteed success. Not like some of the mortal awakenings that struggle for years to find a way to even start. Chapter 1572 Explore the Town. With the training portion done, the elder was ready to get back to the rest of his duties, and Remy was reminding Carl not to forget to go to the winery and get some of that plum wine. Carl took a second to check on the others and found that Kara and Leo were currently in class, watching a combat tutorial, while Tion was napping in the apartment while Dana tried to decide what skills should get the last few points she had. Ray was the only one out and about right now, as she wanted to study the styles and fashion of the clan. There were functional styles that everyone wore when they were training or out on missions, but there were also flashier versions of those styles to be worn around town, and she didn't quite understand all the fashion rules of this place. Once she had that mastered, she could start to distribute her own clothing line here, and decorating the immortals. Most of the clothes here weren't even good. Just pretty to look at. The armor was quite good, but the clothing was mostly disposable. It got destroyed all the time when they were training or fighting, so everyone had to keep a half-dozen copies of their favorite outfits. For Ray, that was tragic. But it was also an opportunity. She could make slightly better quality disposable training clothing, stuff that wouldn't actually get damaged so easily, or items with strategically removable sleeves, designed to tear free to release you from a grab. It would keep constant business coming to her, but without letting everyone keep wearing that cheap woven cloth. She did wonder if this clan had any vampires. The vampires should understand the need for properly fashionable outfits. She hadn't seen any yet, but she was also out in the bright sunlight looking at clothes when the shops weren't as busy. Come evening, the streets would fill, and she would watch the people's fashion, not the shops. Carl walked into the wine shop, and realized that it was not at all what he had assumed. His mind had been envisioning a wine store like the ones he was used to at home, where there were dozens of bottles sitting on display, waiting for you to pick something. But here it was just a counter with a young man meditating it. Carl knocked softly on the counter, and the man opened his eyes. Good day, we've got the plum wine, and some of our new sweet melon wine available today. Carl nodded. I will take one of each. That's 500 coins for the plum, and 100 for the sweet melon. Carl exchanged a clan credit through the system interface for 1,000 coins, and placed them on the counter. The monk stepped into the back room and returned with 2 clay gourds, about a liter each. The white ribbon is the sweet melon. Let us know if you like it. It's not as strong of a flavor as the plum, and made by our apprentices, so it's not as potent, but I am told that the flavor is quite pleasing. Indeed I will. See you soon. The monk nodded and went back to meditation while Carl left the shop and decided to explore the city a little. There were all sorts of small shops, most of them selling some sort of food or consumable resource. That seemed to be the most common money-making venture here, as most would turn in the truly valuable items to the clan warehouse if they didn't need them. However, Carl soon found that there was a large market outside the walls. It wasn't just the clan members, it ran from the walls to the docks. And there were all sorts of common items, foreign items from the sailors and other oddities on display. This was also the first place he had seen mortals other than the bunnies. Most of them were ragged-looking humans, the ones who had been taken from a mortal world, but had no talent to lead them to immortality, or who had failed to awaken a system interface that would let them grow in power. They were rather pitiable, but that didn't mean they didn't have anything to sell. Carl wandered the market until he found a battered-looking young woman sitting on a blanket with a collection of what was clearly flotsam, items recovered from the shore after being washed up. But among the items was a waterlogged book with runic writing on the cover. The magic had faded from it, if there ever was any. Plus, the pages were certain to be illegible, as it was soaked in salt water. In fact, it was still crusty with salt, as she didn't dare to clean it and risk damaging it even more. Still, it was a book that might have soggy and blurred runic instructions for something in it. It was worth the chance. The merchant, or perhaps it would be better to call her a vagrant with a blanket, looked up hopefully as Carl stopped in front of her. Immortal Lord, was there something that I have a few treasures here today that might clean up well. she suggested. I will give you 100 coins for the book. A few of the shoppers stopped to look at the crazy man. No more than 10 coins, that was what a waterlogged book might be worth. If you were feeling generous. But he offered 10 times that much. Had they missed something? The woman nodded eagerly, and Carl dropped a small bag full of coins in her hand, then moved the book to his inventory. Remy could sort it out when she got a moment. She was good with books. Pleasure doing business. Likewise. Thank you for your generosity, sir. Carl walked away, leaving the immortals baffled at the strange exchange. But he had more important things to do. He could see a boat full of what his home world called the Blue Elves. They weren't actually blue. Or they were. But only because dark elves tan to a slightly blue-gray color in the sun. Not that anyone had ever seen one with a tan other than the Blue Elves. Half the boat was ascended immortals, and they were beginning to unload cargo while the junior hands secured stalls for their goods. Local items he could get in the clan. However, this boat might have something he hadn't seen before. Chapter 1573 Burning Money. Something in particular you need? One of the elves asked as he started to set up the stalls. Not really. I've perused the majority of the market, and now I'm wondering what your group might have found. The sailor rolled his eyes. If you're just bored and looking to burn coin, we've got a poker game going on board the ship. Carl smiled. Now we're talking. The elf paused his work to assess Carl more carefully. An avatar of the world dragon, is it? And a powerful one for your age. I don't recognize that class tag, but I've seen a decoration like that before. Ask the captain. See if she has a seat at the table. Carl nodded and headed toward the dock, where an elven woman in a bright blue tricorn hat was shouting orders at the sailors. Permission to board? Carl shouted up at her, and the woman waved for him to come up to the top deck. One leap and a bit of assistance from his skills took Carl to the steerage area of the ship, where the captain was still shouting orders. Your man says that you've got a poker game going, Carl informed her between orders. The woman smiled. You think that you're good enough at the game to play against us? Carl just laughed. Talent has nothing to do with it. The captain whistled, and her first officer, a similarly dressed 11 sailor, waved Carl over. I don't know who imagined that you were a big enough sucker to want to gamble with us, but we do have a game going. The buy-in is 2,000 coins. Can you afford to lose that? I can. He followed her beneath the decks, where a dozen older sailors and a handful of desperate-looking humans were playing cards around a round table covered in clay chips. There were 6 seats and only 5 were currently full as promised. Pass me the coin and I will trade you the chips. It's the rule. We only use chips, as every nation has different currency. Carl went to exchange more credits, and realized that he had options now that he was standing on the ship. He could exchange for the clan coins, which were the local currency, or he could trade for elven silver coins. They appeared to have the same value to the system, 1,000 to a clan credit. So, he picked the elven silver out of respect for his host. The sailor opened the bag, and then stared at Carl in shock before handing him a stack of clay gambling chips and nodding to the table. Carl took his seat, and the dealer nodded as he waited for Carl to place his money on the table before dealing the next hand. This type of poker was simple. Everyone got 2 cards, and then 5 more were placed on the table to complete your hand, with betting in between each drawing. Carl picked up his cards, and then realized that the deck was enchanted. With the fundamental rule of mana manipulation, he could see the faint glow on the deck, a flat sheen of power that prevented his senses from penetrating the paper. Sneaky but fair. Not completely familiar with the betting customs, Carl looked at his cards, the 4 and 5 of cups, and matched the current bet when it was his turn. All but 2 of the others folded, and the dealer laid out the first 3 cards to start the next round of betting. The 3, 6 and 7 of cups. Carl looked at the stack of chips and saw that they were 1, 5 and 10 coin denominations. The current bet was 50 coins each, but a small voice in the back of his head, possibly Kara, told him that this was the perfect time to push his luck. He placed down chips worth 500 coins, and the other 2 glared at him. They were not going to be bullied out of the betting by a large raise. If the newcomer wanted to play dirty, they would take him for everything. One man immediately folded, but the other smiled at Carl and upped the bet to 1,000 coins. Carl matched it, and the dealer set down another card, the 7 of dragons. A smirk crossed the man's face, and Carl realized that he had at least 3 of a kind. 3 sevens in particular. But it was his turn to bet, so he tapped the table, indicating that he would hold the current bet. Why don't we make this a properly high-stakes game? The other gambler muttered. He slid another 1,000 coins of chips over, enough to completely empty Carl's buy-in amount. The rest of the table looked smug as Carl matched the bet, and the King of Dragons was drawn. He checked again, and the other gambler laughed. Don't back out on me now. Dealer, I would like to raise the ante with items. So that was possible too. Carl tried not to smile as he realized that he was going to enjoy this game. Name your trade, and we will offer credit. The first mate announced. I will wager my dimensional compass. The elf smiled. That was a good win for them. If he lost the hand, they could buy it from Carl. Presumably, the strange young man with the black eyes that reflected the chaos plane wouldn't be interested in a simple item for moving between dimensions. He could likely do that on his own. Do you fold? Or will you match the wager? The dealer asked. Carl took out a villa stone and tossed it to the first mate. A fully equipped separate space, with food creation and mana gathering. A raise? Yes, I can accept that as equal wager. Show your cards. The gambler turned over his cards. 4 sevens. Straight flush. The man surged to his feet, blade in hand. But Carl just smiled at him and set off a small chaos vortex in front of his face. Not close enough to hit him, but enough to warn him that he was flirting with death. The gambler stomped out of the room, leaving the colorful chips that were still in his pile on the table. The first mate gestured at the chips, and the dealer handed them to one of the sailors, who counted them and grabbed silver from the chest in the corner, before running out after the man. The elves never cheated anyone of their money. Chapter 1574 Wave Rider Treasures. The other gamblers in the room watched in amusement as the first mate gently stroked the villa stone, while ignoring the dimensional compass, which he had been eager to purchase only a few seconds earlier. If you would like to purchase it, I am looking for curiosities. Rare resources and trinkets that I might not have seen before, Carl suggested. They were a trading vessel and he was from the New Home Merchant clan. He was even wearing their badge, so it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that he wanted to trade. I think that we can come up with something. Cash in your chips and I will take you to the hold. No unattended chips, and they can't leave the gambling room. They were enchanted to set off an alarm if they were removed, or placed next to chips without the enchantment on them. The code of the seas was clear. You could and should kill a man for cheating you. Carl collected his winnings, nearly 5,000 coins worth in total, and traded them to the man by the chest of coins. What he got back was a mix of elven and foreign coins, along with local. But the system said they were all worth roughly the same, despite being different sizes and shapes. You don't count your payment? The first mate asked. The system tells me how many coins are in the bag when I put it in my inventory. Carl clarified. Good function for a merchant. Alright, first things first. Did you want the dimensional compass? Or will you trade it for equivalent value? If there is something here worth buying, I will trade it. If not, I will take it with me and trade it later. The elf smiled. That was a good answer and didn't commit Carl to anything. But they had all the good stuff on this ship. They just didn't show it to the public. In Carl's mind, Opal was laughing hysterically as he unintentionally cleared a man of the vast majority of his life savings, then managed to unwittingly access the hidden treasure hold of a wave rider trading ship. They were notorious pirates, organized crime on a global scale. But Carl just saw it as a gambling den, which the luck of the World Dragon would allow him to excel inside. The hold of the ship was more like a trophy case in Carl's mind. All sorts of rare items were on display, set out for purchasers or whoever came to admire them. The only downside was that most of them were weapons and accessories, and that was not what Carl needed. I imagine this isn't quite as impressive to you as to most who enter the room, given that you made the item you're looking to trade for treasures from the captain's personal stash. There should still be something, though. Carl stopped as something caught his eye. It was the wing of a supreme ranked butterfly, pure crystal, and radiating faint power. Oh, now that is lovely. The elf gave him a confused look. What could he need it for? He was not an illusionist or a fae, who could integrate the supreme ranked butterfly into their bloodline to advance and evolve. Will we be able to make a trade? It wasn't a whole corpse, just a wing of a supreme ranked being. Matilda had used a supreme ranked octopus as a snack, so it shouldn't be too horrifically expensive. The elf sighed as he checked something. The forest trickster butterfly is extremely rare, and the wings are an excellent resource for fae evolutions. So, the villa stone and the compass? The elf shook his head. I don't think that will be enough to sell the deal to her. Carl looked at the pile of stuff in his inventory. The captain was a mage of some sort, her name was that shade of blue in the interface. So she wouldn't need a strength item. Or perhaps she would. It would be funny. What about if I add this lovely strength ring on top? The first mate examined the ring, then laughed. Oh, that ring is nasty. That is a lot of added strength. But you do know she is a mage, right? If you would like, I can teach her to use fist as well. It's quite effective in close quarters. The first mate blushed bright blue and choked on his words. Right, that could be taken a couple of different ways, especially by a sailor. The first mate paused as he sent a system message. Then boots thumped softly down the steps, so gentle that Carl nearly missed them. even with his super-sensitive hearing. Only the fact that he had soul sight made him certain that it was the captain, and not an assassin or other stealth-type class. "So, you want my butterfly wing, do you?" she asked as she entered the room. "Indeed. I have offerings of treasures. A dimensional compass, a villa stone that can be used to turn your quarters into a highly defensible separate space, and a max stat strength ring with both base strength and a percentage bonus. Even for a mage, that much extra strength is useful. Plus, it's stylish. Act now, and I will upgrade the villa stone to include a bunny girl made to see to all your needs. Or perhaps you prefer a nubile elven boy toy." The captain smiled. "And who says that the clergy don't know the way to a woman's heart? Is there a way to make the appearance optional?" Carl nodded slowly. "Give me 5 minutes and I can do that. Just hand me the stone and I will make adjustments." Actually, he would take it back and make her a fresh one that looked the same. Altering a finished item wasn't that easy. "Do you have a preferred design? If I'm altering the space, I can make it look like anything. If that's the case, make it look like a spider goddess temple. That would be best." Carl winked at her. "I know exactly the thing for you." Or, Ray did. Chapter 1575, Ray's Perfect Temple. Ray really did know just what a spider goddess temple should have, and it was a bit horrific. But that was how every spider goddess temple was supposed to be. While the blue elves were sailors, they had come from the underground lands of the dark elves at the start, and some still followed the spider goddess instead of one of the water-based shamanistic elven gods. Carl quickly made a fresh stone, and made it with the option to have the gargoyle constructs that served as maids appear as anything you wanted within Carl's understanding anyhow. He handed the captain the stone, and she immediately activated it, leaving them all standing in a black stone altar room, with a dark elven fungi tree forest outside, designed after the dark elven dungeons that Carl had visited. The gargoyles the captain chose were designed to look like high priestesses, and the first mate took one look at them, then turned and walked right out the door back onto the ship. "I think that he doesn't trust your good intentions," Carl joked. The captain laughed, and the priestesses changed to acolytes in simple black robes. Men are supposed to be terrified of the high priestesses of the spider goddess. "It's a bit surprising that you are not." Carl shrugged. "I have a skill to summon them, and I have a blood destruction demonic spider among my companions. I'm already familiar with the basic attitude of the spider goddess followers. This is lovely. Feels like it's an actual temple. Like I can almost feel the goddess. Now, is there more to the space than just the altar? I did want to use it as my bedroom." Carl nodded. "There is a whole temple with quarters large enough for hundreds, including a main bedroom which would normally be for the high priestess, but it has all the luxuries. There is also a garden outside, so you can enjoy some time in the dark on particularly bright and sunny days. I don't know if the sailors still feel that need, but the dark elves despise going out in the sun nearly as much as the vampires do. Not so much. Our magic has adapted over the centuries, to the point where we're not dark elves anymore. At least not in that sense. But his has a feeling of nostalgia, you know. Plus, we never really got over that primal urge to do naughty things on the goddess altar." Carl winked at her. "No wonder the first mate ran away on you." If the captain was startled that Carl wasn't rising to her bait, she didn't show it. Instead, she walked out of the room to inspect the rest of the space, with Carl following her. The temple was like any other, a black stone spire with the altar room on the main floor, followed by the common areas, then the sleeping areas, with the high priestess bedroom at the top. Outside, there were a few acres of trees, the bioluminescent fungi that grew deep underground, and gave the dark elven cities their only light. "Wonderful. Not only is it comfortable, it is portable. I can keep this active and let the crew hide in it, should we lose a battle and board it." "Noble self-sacrifice? That's startling," the captain laughed. "A class skill that lets me dive to the bottom of the ocean and breathe water for months on end. If the ship is lost, I will be presumed lost with it. But with this completely separate space, I can save some of my crew. Oh, I should check the clan to see if I can find a skill like that. I don't have much for water travel. I can fly, so I didn't really consider it. Such is the nature of dragons. That's why hiding underwater is such an effective technique. Unless it's a water dragon or a flood dragon, they'll never go looking for you in the depths." "That was actually brilliant." "Well, I think that this will be perfect for you. But I should get back to my day. I have a friend who could really use the inspiration from that wing." Carl explained. "Ah, so it wasn't for you. That must be a very good friend." Carl nodded. "A bonded divine beast. Part of my class abilities." "Now that makes more sense. I couldn't guess what your class was when you came on the boat. But it's a beast-taming related one. What is it called, if you don't mind me asking? So I know the next time I see that color pattern." "Ancient pet sitter." The captain froze. She was completely immobile, not even breathing, for 2 full seconds before she started moving again. See. Well, congratulations on your advancement. I am certain that your class is going to be everything that you had hoped it would be. Interesting. She knows what the class can do. Ray noted. Then, she left the city and returned to her space, so she could come out and meet this new elf. The captain returned to her senses when there was movement near them, and Carl raised his hand to stop her from attacking. It's just Lady Ray, my spider companion. She wanted to come meet you, since you knew about my class. She doesn't get many chances to meet people who know new things and also have an affinity for her goddess. Ray waved happily, and the captain smiled. I suppose that it's a pleasure to meet you then, Lady Ray. You can call me Captain Mariel. Ray looked around the room. This isn't bad, but it's all illusionary. Perhaps you'd be interested in purchasing some real immortal spider silk? The aura that it gives off would really enhance the space. Carl got it very close to correct, but an illusion will never beat the real thing. The captain smiled. So that is why you came to visit. All right, let's see what you have in mind. Well, we have curtains, sheets, and bedding. But the real good stuff is this. My newest line of nightwear. Carl, take your prize and go. We need some girls' time. Chapter 1576 Resources Aflutter. Carl laughed as Ray chased him out of the room right after the captain paid him. The butterfly wing went directly to Opal's space. The butterfly was just finishing her understanding of the fundamental rule of illusion, which made it the perfect time for her to trigger an evolution along with her advancement. Being exposed to the immortal world was good for her understanding, but her actual power level was still languishing behind most of the others, as she had been too distracted making shows and illusionary worlds. The imbalance between her power and Carl's was forcing her to grow rapidly, and with her understanding complete, this resource should be just enough to get her past the bottleneck. Or you could use evolution on top of the resource and I could get a huge jump. Opal suggested. Carl checked the requirements for evolution, and found that the butterfly wing really could be used to evolve Opal into a forest trickster butterfly. It was listed as a FAC species with an innate potential of low legendary status. That was 2 potential advancements without needing to change again, for the price of 1 resource that he had already purchased. But with this being the first time that he used evolution on Opal, the resource should be an added benefit on top of the advancement, improving her power level immediately. Much better luck than Thor, whose evolution resources were much harder to find. Are you 100% sure that you want to gain this evolution? There is a chance that you might lose some of your old racial abilities, like the ability to go invisible without using a skill. Carl warned. The Fey butterfly can do that too. Remy added helpfully. Do you know the species? It's in some of the books that I have read, and it will give Sister Opal an innately humanoid form option. Kind of. They can turn into FAC sprites with butterfly wings. According to the book, they should be about 10 centimeters tall. It sounds kind of cute, even if the species is known as a nuisance for their illusions and pranks. Thor chuckled at Remy's words. A nuisance with illusions and pranks was a great description of his butterfly sister. Not quite the words he would have chosen, but accurate. Alright, if you're totally sure, I will trigger the evolution for you and use the wing to give you the bump that you wanted. Carl agreed. Bring it on, boss. Fey magic illusions incoming. Opal shouted in her space. But her mind was not on any sort of productive activities. She had been reading an elf-on-elf Yuri romance since Carl had first met with the blue elven captain. Focus. You need to make sure that your advancement makes you into a properly grown butterfly. No random lewd thoughts. All focus on the rule of illusions you've mastered. Got it, focus. No lewd elves. Once she was actually focused, Carl activated evolution, using the forest trickster butterfly's wing as an additional guiding resource. Opal immediately shone with power, and her gossamer wings began to alter. The opalescent sheen changed into an impossible array of green and gold earth tones, while still being largely translucent. But now, she had 4 wings in total, and her wingspan expanded to nearly 1.5 meters. Her power level soared as she advanced, and Carl could tell that she had made the immortal rank without triggering a tribulation. That was ideal for Opal, who preferred all dramatic shows to be strictly on her own directions. New skill gained. Forest Trickster causes a spatial distortion effect within an illusionary domain, to cause travelers to believe they are lost within familiar surroundings, without ever leaving their position. That was a pretty useful skill. But Opal saw far more than simple misdirection as the use for that one. She could make whole shows, with the audience believing that they were moving through the city following the characters. A fully immersive spectacle, with completely changing scenery, like an escape room but where the space wasn't limited, as they were not actually moving anywhere. There was so much potential. However, that wasn't her only new skill. The forest trickster butterfly wasn't a kind and gentle form of Fey. They could also emit toxic fog to poison those trapped in their illusions, and cast a variety of mental attacks based on the Mind Spike skill. Some uses were subtle, others were not. A mild headache mixed with toxic fog would keep most from realizing that they were trapped in a never-ending forest. Just what the forest trickster needed to trap its victims. Strangely, it wasn't Opal but Leo who saw the hidden potential first. If you mind spike the control nerves for the stomach, you can make them feel sick, he offered. Kara had much more evil intentions for that skill. But the turtle wasn't wrong. She didn't have time to ponder it, though. Leo's first sparring session was coming up soon, and she wanted to see how her youngest brother would do against the other children. Carl walked down the plank and back onto solid ground as Opal tried her new transformation, and came out in the form of a tiny four-winged fae, her wings flickering in and out of sight as they kept her hovering over Carl's head. Then, she landed on his shoulder, and adjusted the dress she had created based on Sister Ray's fashion designs. It was green silk, off one shoulder, and suitably well decorated for an immortal fae like herself. One of the elves cleared his throat as he noticed the creature on Carl's shoulder. Sir, I believe you may want to refer to the regulations on bringing dangerous creatures into the city. You never know when the humans will get persnickety. Carl waved off his concern. Opal is fine, she's a friend of mine. I will vouch for her good behavior. The elf shrugged. Can't say I didn't warn you. Did you still want to buy anything? We've got most of the shipment out on display now. I will take it that your poker game didn't go well if you're out so fast. Actually, I made money. But the captain had something she wanted to trade me, so I left the table early. That was unexpected. Normally, the sailors would have cleared out the humans before they left the table. That was what made it fun. Chapter 1577 Biome Upgrades. Carl turned to the shelves of goods that the sailors had brought in, and found that there were dozens of rare plants, seeds for immortal world resources, and other curiosities that weren't things he could make for himself. The tiny world and the beast spaces all needed upgrades to their biome, and some new plants were never a bad option. Almost everything that they had was brought from the mortal world, and for Remy in particular that was no longer going to be sufficient. She needed new alchemy resources for her work, and if she didn't grow them herself, they were both expensive and annoying to get. Whoever thought that needing to go to the counter to buy things instead of having them ordered into your alchemy lab was a good idea needed a good slap. Especially now that she was a tiny snake again. Her lamia form risked being stepped on all the time if she wasn't flying, and she liked the feel of ground under her scales. What she needed was an apprentice. She could send apprentices to go get things on her account. Unfortunately, most of the bunnies were afraid of snakes, an innate aversion to venomous creatures. So, while they would bring her things she asked for, they didn't come to seek her out the way that they came looking for Carl. Opal fluttered around Carl's head as she realized that she could help with this. If she cast an illusionary domain around Remy, she wouldn't risk being stepped on as she traveled. Others would simply step from one side of the illusion to the other. Or she could just send her bodyguards to go get her stuff. Thor noted. Right? Why hadn't she thought of that? They were perfectly good assistants, but she hadn't had them out since she arrived in the immortal world. She was slacking, forgetting everything but her alchemy work. At immortal rank, the bodyguards were very similar to their old appearance, for armed Naga warriors with simple golden armor on blue bodies. But now they had the option to wear accessories and other gear. They could always use weapons that weren't part of the spell, but they didn't benefit from other gear, it was just a decoration if they put it on. Now, she could load them up with good stuff from Carl's stockpile of stuff, and they would be extra effective combatants. Remy didn't expect anyone to challenge them, though. Picking fights with random Naga warriors was a quick way to end up in pain. The staff at the counter did a double take as the Naga slid in the back door and took his place in line, holding a piece of parchment in one of his hands. Sir, is there something we can help you with? The clerk asked, wondering where this burly Naga had come from. Miss Remy asked us to get her ingredients. I have a note. I need stuff. Put it on my account. Then a list of common alchemy plants with Remy's signature at the bottom. The clerk laughed at the terrible handwriting on the note. Remy was perfectly capable of making precisely formed runes for her runic alchemy. But when she wrote a note, it was a barely legible scribble of cursive script. Was it a mandatory feature of being a doctor, perhaps? All of the healing specialized alchemists had terrible handwriting, but most of them didn't know how to write in runic, so they had never had to do more than write order sheets. Carl browsed goods with Opal on his shoulder, pointing out things that none of them had in their spaces. They were quickly filling the clerk's basket with seeds and small plants. That was the priority for their shopping, with other rare resources coming afterward. If they still had money and motivation, they weren't trying to clean the place out, but there were so many rare plants gathered that the beasts couldn't resist. Ever since Kara got that chaos lily from the battlefield, they had been on the lookout for new stuff for their spaces. The old mortal realm plants were good, but they weren't quite the same as the immortal world's native magical resources. To keep up their advancement, and in Remy's case, their crafting, they needed new scenery. Carl looked at the basket in the elf's hand. What are we at now? That's a pretty good selection of new plants for me to get started. A quick double check and the elf smiled. The total is up to 1,800 silver so far. I believe that you have one of every type of plant that we have in stock, but we have many other options for sale today. Carl shook his head. No, plants should be good for today. I'll have my hands full trying to get all these started and growing well. I don't need more trinkets to occupy my time. Though. Carl saw a heart-shaped blue magical gem the same color as Dana's eyes. What is that? I like the color. The elf shrugged. Water element crystal. They're quite popular among the ladies, that is why we cut them into the heart shape. There are other cuts available, if you prefer. I will take a look. It's an interesting blue color with the way that it seems to have a depth to it. Not like the standard elemental stones. The sailor nodded. Ah, that's because they are formed in the deep ocean from salt water and magic. They're not made with pure water magic. It gives them a bit more variance. Not so great for crafting, but they're incredible for jewelry and decorative purposes. See if he has a red one that's anatomically correct. Ray requested. My friend wonders if you have red ones, cut to resemble an actual human or elven heart. Your friend has strange tastes. Well, she is a blood destruction spider. I'm not sure who she's trying to woo, but I trust her judgment. The sailor snickered, but took out small red gem cut to resemble an actual heart. Chapter 1578 School Rules. Carl created 2,000 fresh elven silver coins and handed them over in a bag to the merchant, who also gave him the same startled look that the other sailors had. If it's elven silver, there is a discount. Here, your items and your change. The bag was a quarter full when Carl got it back, a full 500 coin discount for paying in the Waverider's preferred currency. He would have to remember that for future transactions. If he could get that sort of discount on big-ticket items, it would make them much more affordable for him to acquire for the team. And the team had a rather long list of things that they would like to get their hands on. Once they got the plants started and spreading through their spaces, they needed to see all the new magical resources that this world had to offer. The ones that weren't plants. There was so much good stuff floating around this world out in the open that there had to be even better stuff hidden away for exclusive purchase, and they didn't even know that it existed to ask for it. What was the difference between not knowing that an opportunity existed and being robbed? In Kara's mind, nothing. Hiding the good stuff from her was 100% a scam to keep her from getting powerful and having fun. She was only paying minimal attention to what was going on with Carl right now. Leo had gone through the basic rules with the teacher, and a friendly sparring match to learn the basic fighting style of the clan. Now, they were going to let him fight with the other first years. The match was unarmed, as they were first years, and that posed a problem for Leo. Kara had informed him that you had to hit people with a closed fist. Slapping them when you were in human form was an insult, but he had never punched anyone before. Carl also didn't know a martial art style that the turtle could use. That was an oversight that they were going to have to remedy. If he was going to be training at the school with the others, he needed to be able to keep up with them. They all had classes, but he just had whatever he could borrow from Carl. Oh, we get to use non-attack skills in a fight? That's better. I can do that. What do they mean golems are cheating? It's not an attack. Well, I don't care what they say, the golems are totally not cheating, even if they're taking up the whole ring. Kara was laughing hysterically as the annoyed little turtle dismissed the pair of massive crocolisks he had created with Greater Golem. Then, Leo realized that he did know a fighting style. He watched Brother Thor training all the time. He trained for armed and unarmed combat in human form, and Leo could mimic what he knew of that style. Hey, that was unarmed. What do they mean that a power bomb is not allowed? I didn't even use gravity slam. This fight has too many rules. Being a transformed giant turtle, Leo's strength was much higher than the other children of his size, and even without knowing much about fighting, he was basically manhandling them. But he was also naturally armored. For his opponent, who didn't know a defensive skill, and who wasn't allowed to use attack skills, punching the turtle's shell was only inflicting pain on himself. Ha! I know how this works now. Stone form and invincible defense, and I can just stand here while they beat themselves up. Now, how did that punch technique go? Start low, go for the stomach, and straight up? Yep, that was it. Folded him like Thor folds shirts. Carl sighed. Leo was a thug, picking on the other children with his invulnerable body. At least he hadn't tried to use Kara's fighting style. The teacher said I wasn't allowed to. Carl made his way back to the clan compound, intending to pick his two miscreants up from school. The teachers would surely have some questions for him, and there would be paperwork to get Leo properly enrolled. He could sign Tion and Opal up if they wanted to, but Tion didn't like being humanoid, and leaving Opal and Kara unattended together was just asking for trouble. Opal laughed at the thought of the fun that she could have with Kara in a whole class full of bored kids. I wonder if the teacher would even notice if we used an illusion to replace everyone as we went for snacks? She doesn't seem really bright. Not too powerful, either. I bet that we could hide it from her. Kara offered. Behave. You're supposed to be learning, not planning pranks. That's a kind of learning. Dana's mental reprimand made the badger sigh. Everyone was so against having fun with the teachers. What were teachers for if not exploring the very outer limits of what could be considered acceptable public behavior? There is something seriously wrong with that logic. They're supposed to teach you what is acceptable, not let you try out everything that isn't. Don't make their life harder than it needs to be. You'll just cause trouble for everyone later if you get a bad reputation. Dana warned. Kara sighed. This place was too boring if she couldn't mess with people. How about an outing? I've only got a day or two left before my immortal spirit is formed, and then we can all go out and explore. Perhaps take a big team with us so that we have a better chance of doing fun stuff that's only available for larger groups, and meeting people from other clans. Dana offered. Now, that sounded a lot better than being in class following the rules all the time. The rules didn't sound too bad to Leo. He didn't understand why some of them were in place, like the no power bombs in matches rule. But they weren't difficult to follow once he knew them. Chapter 1579 Pickup Duty. Carl arrived at the clan school 10 minutes before the students finished their final class of the day and found himself among a large group of waiting parents, including the members of the PDA, who were keeping a clear distance from him. You have children in the school? You seem quite young, one of the mothers noted. In a way, they are magical beasts, not my biological children. But it's Leo's first day at school, and I want to know how he likes it. Being at school full-time will be a big change for him, but he's growing up fast, so it's time that he learned to socialize with other children, and not with his sisters. Sisters? How many beasts do you have with you? Well, there is Lady Ray and Remy the Alchemist Naga Matriarch and Hawk and Tion and Kara and Leo. Those are the only ones likely to be seen around town. Unless you count Opal, who is a bit of a homebody. From his shoulder, Opal giggled. Indeed, she rarely came out as a butterfly. But now she was a fae, and this body wasn't nearly as fragile or susceptible to mana fluctuations as her old body was. She might enjoy being outside, where she could meet new people. Opal waved at the former head of the PDA, who gave her a confused look. She had never seen that small fae before, but Opal clearly seemed to know her. Good afternoon, miss. Have we met? She asked. Opal flew closer so she could speak normally, and shook her head. Not officially, but the illusionary skill that hit you during your duel with Carl is one of my racial traits. I just wanted to thank you for being a sport about it. The illusion can be incredibly real when you are a bit disoriented. The woman paled, then took a few deep breaths. Please inform him that such a perverse use of that spell is beyond the limits of human decency. Opal smiled and nodded. If you would like, I have prepared a few immersive shows of other genres that you might appreciate. It would help recover from the trauma of the duel, I believe. I am extensively studied in human and dragonkin psychology, as well as theatrical productions. A few of the other mothers giggled, and Opal brought out a tiny notebook. What do you think of this one? The woman took the notebook and flipped it open to the first page, which introduced the story as Seduced by the Werewolf Alpha Triplets, an original story by Opal Karlsdottir. That is not something you should be showing off in public, the woman exclaimed in disgust. She threw the notebook away, but a green dragon cleric in the crowd caught it and began flipping through the pages. Oh, this is not bad. You really put in the work to study werewolf politics. Come by later. The Green Dragon Dormitory will have popcorn, and we can have a ladies' night. One of the other ladies, a human rogue, took the notes and read the first few pages. Wait, it's a romance? I totally thought that was going to be the smuttiest thing I'd ever read. Oh, there it is. Yeah, the Fae and the Green Dragons are always on the same page. Opal fluttered in a happy circle, spreading sparkling silver dust with every flap of her wings. I have so many stories. Action, drama, romance, even tragedies and horror stories. I've only recently reached immortality, but soon, I will begin to arrange regular showings, so that everyone can enjoy some new stories that aren't on the roster at the other theater. The Green Dragon came to stand by Carl, as the PDA ladies were moving away from him even further, now that they realized that there was a Fae trickster butterfly with him. The Chaos Badger was bad enough, but now there was another bad influence working with her. Leo came out of the school first, holding a backpack full of textbooks and notebooks for his classes. They had assigned him some reading so that he would catch up to everyone else. The teachers didn't know what he had studied and what he had not, so they had just given him everything that the first-year class would be learning. That was a lot of material, but the little turtle had no issues with it. He already knew most of the simple stuff. Divine beasts were born with extensive genetic knowledge passed down from their parents. So they knew some things about the world, their species, their skills and language. But all this stuff was made for human children who didn't have that advantage. In fact, much of it assumed that the children were barely literate, even though they already had a system-assigned class and significant combat power. Hey Carl, you came to pick me up. Look, I got all these new books, and I got a gold star in art class, and I even won my sparring match. Carl smiled and patted Leo on the top of his head, while Opal laughed. One of the other mothers crouched to be on his level. Did you enjoy your first day? I think you should be in my daughter's class. Leo nodded excitedly. Your daughter is the druid, right? She looks like a much younger you. The other mothers chuckled at his blunt honesty. Yes, my daughter is the druid. Did you learn everyone's name today? Nope. We've all got name tags, so I don't need to remember them. The mother sighed. It's polite to learn your new friends' names. Who were you expecting to pick you up? You seemed excited to see your daddy here today. Oh, he's not my daddy. Sister Opal says that has a different meaning. He's my Carl. Like a dad, but different. I thought that Kara would walk back with me, and we could get ice cream. She's got some coins, so we can get snacks. Opal winked at the turtle, and the mothers in the crowd laughed softly. Leo's sisters were definitely a bad influence on him. Who is Kara? I don't remember a girl by that name. Oh, she got put in the senior class since she's older and she's got combat power. There she is, with the white stripe in her hair. Kara came over with a few older girls from her new class. Hey Leo. Making friends. Brother Thor says it's important to make friends the first day. Couldn't let him down. Chapter 1580 Ice Cream. A few other children came over to say hello when they saw that Kara and Leo were chatting. Everyone knew who Kara was, and she was quite popular with the kids in her class. But Leo was new, and he had an aura of supreme happiness to him today, after his first day in school. The other kids in his first-year class were all recounting his version of sparring, including the now infamous powerbomb. Nobody had ever told him that it was against the rules because humans were susceptible to that sort of slam. But for a Tortollan, as they assumed that it wasn't a big deal. Unlike their animalistic kin, they could get off their backs easily enough. Did I hear ice cream? I got my 5th gold star of the month. That means my mom will let me go for ice cream. A little girl with sparkly pink nail polish announced. The woman who had been speaking to Leo smiled at her, and the girl turned to Leo. Leo, can I come with you for ice cream? Leo smiled. Of course, Cindy Lou. More people for ice cream is always better. Carl, I need coins. Carl laughed, as Leo had admitted only seconds earlier that he didn't know any of his classmates' names. He was using the system interface to tell who was who. It seemed inevitable that the two of them were about to become friends. Cindy was a druid, and Leo was a turtle. There weren't many beastkin in the younger class, and Cindy was already friends with all of them. 2 cat-eared boys came over, holding up wedge-shaped quarter-silver coins. Our moms said we can come too, they announced. Kara's friends looked dubious at the idea. They wanted to meet the cute turtle, not hang out with a bunch of 8-year-olds. All right, 2 groups. I will bring the older students out, and Leo can lead his new friends out to celebrate. There are too many of us for one table, Kara announced. That worked for her friends. They wanted the ice cream, that was not a question. And then when the other kids were dragged away by their parents, they could meet Leo. If he was related to Kara, he had to be a fun person. Ladies, shall we follow them? Carl asked the mothers who had come to pick the younger kids up. Kara's group were all 15 and 16, ready to graduate from basic schooling. They didn't need supervision and could walk home alone. But Leo's friends were unlikely to be left unsupervised with a new arrival to the clan, especially Carl. He had terrified the PDA members enough that the horror stories they told about his personality were enough to make all the other parents at least a little wary of him, even if his kids seemed well enough behaved. If Kara had known that they thought that way, she would have been horribly disappointed. She had put in so much work to make herself look like an angel to her classmates so that they would trust her when it came time to do fun stuff later. Having their parents see through her act was a great disappointment. The after-school procession to the shopping district was nothing new for the clan, and Dana met Carl and the others halfway, carrying Tion. He hadn't wanted to walk, but he did want a snack. The 2 foxes were attracting a lot of attention in town, as everyone speculated about whether Tion was actually Dana's child, and if she was a foxkin or a transformed kitsune. They were similar in coloration to the Stonefur divine fox, so it was plausible that she might actually be a full-blooded fox. Carl, I heard snacks and came as fast as I could. Tion yipped excitedly. Is that a divine fox? OMG, you are so lucky. Hello, Miss Dana. My name is Cindy. Dana smiled at the blonde girl, while Tion admired the sparkly pink of her fingernails. They were all painted shapes under a layer of clear coat, not just sparkly paint. That was an appropriate level of appreciation for cuteness. All right, everyone split up. 1 class per line. Don't overwhelm a single register. Carl instructed. The cashiers at the store had a look like soldiers going into battle as they prepared to take the after-school influx of orders. Most of them were only a little older than Kara's friends, working their way through the early stages of their advancement. and this was the busiest part of their day. Carl stepped up to the front. I will cover the kids in this group. Kara has the other line. Just let me know what it is worth at the end. I got a rather nice payment for my recent work for the clan. That was when the cashier realized who he was. The man who made the class advancement obelisk. Fully a quarter of the clan had already been there to try their luck, and a large portion of them had managed to get a new class. They had thought that it would be a restrictive item that only worked for those closely aligned to the World Dragon, but after much trial and error, the clan had learned that the obelisk also worked for members with Laughing God governed systems, though the results were unpredictable. One of the men hadn't gotten to choose at all, and had been faced with a roulette wheel of randomly chosen class options that he couldn't decline. The man nearly had a nervous breakdown in the obelisk as the wheel spun, but ended up with a new purple grade class advancement. So all was well that ended well. Even if the system was clearly trolling him. Carl was basically a celebrity to the young immortals of the new home merchant clan. But mostly to the young ladies because the young men found him to be entirely too enviable. He had powerful beast companions, an incredibly overpowered physique, a class that none of them could compare to, and a beautiful wife. All that was left was for them to find out he was a secret billionaire with legendary friends, and they might have to strangle him to death for taking up all of the world's luck for himself. Chapter 1581 Invitation. Carl was handing ice cream from the clerk to the kids when the bell rang to mark a new customer. And the man known locally as the Moron waved a greeting to him. Hey Swag, how's your afternoon going? Carl asked. Good, good. I heard that you might be looking to go on an outing soon. The Dana Mage is almost finished her immortal spirit, and I've spent the last of my clan credits, so I'm looking for another outing. He explained. Carl smiled. I think that we can arrange something. There are always people looking to go out, and I've got a fairly solid base of immortals for my group. The Moron nodded in agreement. Yes, I met one of them earlier. She was with the Blue Elves, having a heated debate about the best arteries to cut if you wanted to make an example of someone. That sounded pretty average for Ray. But not for most other people. Maybe she made friends with similar interests. If you want to go with my usual group, I can arrange that too. There are about 10 of us who like to work together because we have complementary skills, and then we just join with an Ascended Immortal and his core group for larger outings. But there is a spot that would be perfect for 12 lower-ranked members if we can find an Elder or Ascended group leader for the duel. Swag suggested. Oh? What sort of location? We could have Miss Opal here record everything and then show off our glorious victory as training materials for the youngsters when we return. Carl suggested. There is a dungeon opened at Alhoz starting soon. It opens 1 week a month with limited spots. It's a bit of a trip, but they have a portal array that New Home can link to. Portal distances are severely limited on this continent, but that's still within our limitations. Oh, how I miss the days when I could just pop between continents for lunch. Or when continents were only a few thousand kilometers across. This planet is as inflated as the egos of some of the duel champions. Carl laughed at the man's dismay. Indeed, this immortal world was massive, easily 10 times the size of the one that Carl had come from. How that worked with a very similar gravity level was a mystery, but Carl suspected that it had more to do with magic and fundamental rules than physics. That would be perfect. My Dana will have her immortal spirit finished right away, and then we can all go as a group. How many people does the dungeon allow in at a time? Carl asked. 20 to a group. But it sets the difficulty by the level of the strongest, so we can't bring the Ascended Immortal in with us, unless we're feeling huge. So, a group of 21, including our duel champion, is perfect. Asking for them to just stand around and wait for us must be an expensive proposition. Carl noted. Swag nodded. Indeed. It usually costs 10 clan credits to get them to come with us to fight the duel. If they have friends among the other clans or teams, they'll group up and do it together once the access issues are settled. That made much more sense to Carl. Who would want to waste a whole day just standing around? If the issue was that they didn't have a 20-person team at their power level, they could arrange a group after they were there, and go as soon as their juniors were gone. If things went sideways later, thanks to a sketchy group member, that was a different issue. But they would have already fulfilled their obligation to the juniors, and had their chance to get rewards from the dungeon. It was not nearly as organized as the Xylaz region with its annual tournaments. But it wasn't a terrible system, and it would let him meet more people than just the members of the New Home Merchant clan. Possibly friendly members of other clans as well, or ones with rare and interesting skills for him to investigate. He needed more of his own distinct skills and fighting styles so that he wasn't just relying on what he learned from the beasts to keep up with everyone else. Sure, he was strong, but he really was the one slacking on new skills. Ironically, he even had a skill for making skills and a skill for combining skills, and he was still slacking. But once he learned a combat style skill, he should be able to combine it with a few other skills to make something that was truly his. Dana moved to stand beside them. I will actually have my immortal spirit stabilized by the end of the day. It's very close now, and I just need to feed it a bit more energy to keep it from trying to detach. If you want to leave in a few days, that shouldn't be an issue. We will just need to let the school know that the little ones will be absent so that they can come along and play in the dungeon. Don't worry, as long as they enter inside their separate space, dungeons and other system trials count the bonded beasts as part of Carl, so they don't mess up the count. The silly grin that Swag gave them immediately made Dana understand why everyone just called him the moron. That smile spoke of a man with two brain cells both fighting for third place. But he had the ambition, and he had the rest of a team as well as the connections, so there was no real harm in going with him. If they weren't actually capable, they wouldn't have agreed to go with him more than once. That's wonderful. I will let you know the moment that the dungeon opens, and we can all go out for an adventure. I'm getting so close to advancement I can feel it. Then he rushed out of the ice cream shop. The door slammed shut behind him as he skidded to a stop, holding up a smushed cupcake wrapped in wax paper. He had no idea how that got in his pocket, but it smelled pretty good. It must be his lucky day. Free food. Hello everyone, this is Shadow. Due to copyright restrictions on YouTube, I can't publish many of the audiobooks you love. That's why I've created a special paid service where you can enjoy over 300 high-quality audiobooks from platforms like Webnovel, Pocket FM, Audible, Wuxia, and more. Each novel comes as a one-time purchase, no subscriptions, no hidden fees. After payment, you'll receive full access via Telegram, along with all future updates for that novel. You'll find a wide selection of your favorite genres and titles, always in premium audio quality. Check the full list of available novels in the description. DM me now to get your favorite stories in audiobook form and start listening today.